my role as university president to continue to ensure that we have, affordable education for our students that want to come and study. I've got to go out and raise money. I've been incredibly surprised in a good way with how philanthropic this community is here in Washington County. We as a Polytechnic university really missionally have to stay focused on, what's in demand, what's cutting edge, what's coming out. And as a university administration, we have to make sure we're keeping up with that as well.
From the Blue Form Media Studios, this is the 435 Podcast, the pulse of Southern Utah.
If you're looking for a nice cup of coffee and you're in downtown St. George, FS Coffee Co., that's where you're going to want to stop. It's right there on the corner of Tabernacle and Main Street in downtown St. George. So if you got a bicycle, ride it on down there and grab a drip coffee and tell them the 435 guys sent you. Shane Smeed, President, Utah Tech University, newly appointed.
Newly appointed. It's great to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Your first day was just like May. It was like right at graduation. Right?
It was May. I feel like the newest resident of St. George in Washington County. So it's great. It's great to be here. Actually, my very first day of employment was our commencement. And so May 1st, that night, Thursday night, commencement was exhilarating. So I'm leading commencement on my very first day. And then the second day, on May 2nd, we had 3 additional commencement ceremonies. So literally thousands of students walking across the commencement stage, excited about where they're going, where they're going to go work. And I got to be a part of that. So that was really special.
That is pretty cool. Cool. That is cool. So you were born in Utah, up in Provo, right?
Born in Provo, very short period of time, then moved to Arizona, but most of the time grew up in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. And so I consider places like Ohio and Kansas as really where I grew up.
Yeah. And what was that? What was that experience, being a Midwest, would you describe it as like a small town? Were they mainly small towns, or did you grow up in any of the big cities?
So I lived mostly in the suburbs in some of the states that I had lived in growing up. And, for the most part, I've been around more of a rural community. I've also been in the bigger cities. I've lived in 9 states. So when I graduated from college with my bachelor's degree, I went up to work for the Boeing company in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's right.
And then realized that I just wanted to follow my passion. Interestingly enough, it was where my father had worked his entire career in education, higher education. And so after living in Seattle and working for Boeing, I moved to Northern California. And that's kind of where my higher education journey began, where I met my wife.
Where you met your wife?
Like Bay Area?
Yeah, Bay Area. Lived in Santa Rosa at the time. Yeah. And then when I got married, we rented a place in Napa, California.
Cool.
Yeah, it was terrific. My wife was finishing her senior year in the Cal State system at Sonoma State University. Cool. I was working out there. We met, fell in love, and stayed there for a couple of years. And then it was 2001, we decided to move to the Kansas City area. We could actually afford something to buy in Kansas City.
Yeah, you said rent in Napa. I was like, because nobody really buys in Napa unless you're a tech guy. Yeah, I was Cal State grad as well. I went to Cal State Fullerton down in Southern California.
Definitely.
And so you got a family?
We do. Yeah. We have one that's living at home with us right now. He's 16 years old.
Cool.
That's good. He's living at home.
He's living at home. We took him with us. And Landon is he's a great young man. He's going to be a junior at Crimson Cliffs High School here in Washington County. Shout out to Landon. And then we have 2 additional children. We have one that's 20 years old, and he's living in Canada, Calgary right now. And he comes home from a religious mission at the end of this year.
Oh, cool.
And then we have a daughter who just turned 23 yesterday. So shout out to Samantha for her 23rd
Happy birthday, Samantha.
And she and her fiance are getting married in August. And here's the best news. We just had them break it to us that they're going to transfer to Utah Tech.
Oh, cool.
And so we're going to have all 3 of our kids here.
Sweet. Are they going to get married here too?
They're going to get married up north.
Oh, cool.
He's from Idaho Falls, and so they're getting married in the Salt Lake area. Mm-hmm. And then they'll come down here. They already have a deposit on a casita.
Nice.
Let's go. They're not going to live. They're not going to live at home with mom and dad, which is great for them, great for us.
Cool.
But truly, if you were to ask me a month and a half ago, when I started here, whether I thought I'd have all three of my kids coming back to be here, to put roots here in Washington County, I would have never thought that was possible.
Yeah.
So I'm my wife Angela and I are just very excited about it.
That's cool. So had you been to Southern Utah very much before, applying for the position, or?
So interesting, Rob, on that front, having been born in Provo, I have some family along the Wasatch. I did come back for a very short period of time in my early 20s and lived in the Layton area, and then moved back to California. It was one of those situations where I was living in Northern California. My wife and I were essentially friends. I moved to Layton. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. And we were going to get married, and I was going to move back to California, or she was going to move to Utah, and we ended up moving back to California. So, spent a little bit of time in this area, but really excited to visit Southwest Utah. During the interview process, I had never been to St. George or Washington County.
That's crazy.
Except for the day of the interview.
So when you came in, you're like, whoa, this place is not what I expected, maybe. It's hot.
Yeah, it wasn't Salt Lake, right?
Yeah, it's not Salt Lake.
And at the time, I did interview in February.
Oh, nice.
So that's when I received my offer to serve as the 19th president of the university. So February is great. I got here, and admittedly, my wife Angela and she was joining me for the interview process. We fell in love with it. We fell in love with the community, the people, the red rock. I do have some red sand on my shoe.
Nice.
And
it's funny because I don't think I've ever heard anybody go, I visited there once and I didn't really like it that much. Like I've never heard anybody be like, oh, it's okay. It's, it's whatever. It's definitely not that. Everybody who comes here falls in love with it, which is why it's booming.
It is booming. It's a great place when you think about higher education. And in higher education, we see a declining enrollment trend that's happening. And so the demographic shift is concerning for higher education institutions.
You're talking overall, right?
Overall, nationally, exactly. But we're fortunate to have a university campus here where there is a high growth rate. And so we look at the future very optimistically, different than maybe some institutions of higher learning are looking at on a national trend basis.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's get into a couple of questions because I did want to kind of frame this out for everybody to kind of learn something from the conversation we're having. So Utah Tech's the only Polytechnic university. Can you describe what is Polytechnic to the average Rob, the guy out there? It's like, okay, what does that mean? What's that different from just another university?
I love that, and it's not the average Joe, right?
It's not the average Joe. It's the average Rob.
I love
it's the average Rob.
So what I would say is, and actually, my training for my undergraduate education was in a Polytechnic environment.
Okay,
and so coming back and interviewing and having the only Polytechnic university here in the state system is really special. And so when you think about it, oftentimes we talk about higher education as very theoretical. You have the textbooks, you're learning in the textbooks, and really that's great, but the Polytechnic side is really the applications of it. It's the hands-on, applications-oriented education. And so it's really learned by doing. And so if you're like me, that's the best way to learn.
Yeah.
A good example of that was somebody was marveling at the relatively new science and engineering and technology building that we have on campus. And they were looking at the blueprints and they were saying, wow, you have 9 classrooms in there and 31 labs. And so that kind of paints the picture that, much of what's happening in the classroom is then able to be really demonstrated in a very hands-on way in the practical applications of it.
So was it like with the name change, did it kind of morph into a Polytechnic school, or has it always been that way, just not defined as a Polytechnic school?
I think...
or is it shifting into more of a Polytechnic school than it has been in the past?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that was really the start of it. I think there was some programs that were really set up to be practical applications-oriented, hands-on Polytechnic education. But I think certainly when you look at the mission of the institution and going back to a Polytechnic institution, now we're able to look at it very differently. And it sets it up perfectly from a workforce development standpoint, from an economic development standpoint, to really be a boom for this area. And so so, and I also want to say it doesn't mean that the arts and the humanities are going away. They're flourishing. So the arts and humanities are flourishing, but we're also focused on investing in, health sciences and engineering and business and some of those areas that really have tremendous growth potential too.
Yeah, my thought when we talk about declining higher education participation nationwide, I wonder if it's because we have gotten away, in higher education from training students for jobs, right? And so you get these institutions that grow and maybe their humanities and arts are growing, but now the value of that degree has just diminished to where it's, I can go do something else and I don't necessarily have to go to a university to get that education. And also that education might not get me a job. So why would I go to university?
Like a degree in English or art or, something like that.
Yeah.
Where like 30 years ago, there was a lot more value on that. And nowadays it's like, well, I can't get a job with a degree in art.
Do you think there's some correlation to that, to where it's the declining participation in higher education has something to do with, what does that degree actually get me when I'm done with it? Do you think that's part of it, or where do you think that declining population comes from?
Absolutely. Well, I think the biggest question that, the consumers, if you will, the students and their families are asking themselves is, what's the return on investment? Is the value of education or higher education worth it today? And so there's a couple things that are really working in favor of Utah Tech University. The first one is that tuition and fees are very affordable.
So cheapest in the state?
Cheapest,
right?
Most affordable in the state.
Yeah,
most
that's what they say. Most
Not
affordable.
cheapest. Cheapest is the wrong word.
Come on,
right.
yeah.
Most affordable in the state, which is great. And of the state universities, we're very proud of that. And so for students to be able to go year round and be able to have tuition and fees approximately $6,000, I mean, that's a great return on its investment. What I would say is, coming from a liberal arts university where it's important to understand how to learn how to critically think and to be creative. Those are important attributes and skills as well. But I think when you take that and you couple it with the practical applications-oriented hands-on education that a Polytechnic institution can provide, that's really key. And what we find as we talk with employers, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for individuals to really hit the ground floor running. And they come in and they know it because they've done it before. And so one of the things the university really strives to do is make strong connections with industry. And part of those connections with industries are with clinicals, it's with internships. And so individuals get those experiences not only in the classroom and the labs, but they actually get it in business. And then they're able to take those experiences and be successful when they graduate.
Yeah, historically, they've had a pretty great relationship with IHC because we have a regional medical center here, and then the university being literally across the street. You're right; it's like down the road.
Yeah, Sky West, I think.
Yeah,
too.
Sky West. So we've kind of historically always had a pretty good relationship with that, and that's something that you just want to continue to build on.
Very much so. Great leadership at both of those organizations. I think with Intermountain Health, Sky West are a couple great examples. And so part of what a university president has to decide is he or she going to spend time internally only, or are they going to spend time externally? Are they going to spend time really working with corporations, business and industry, in the philanthropic areas? Are they going to spend time raising money for the institution? And I think one of my skill sets really leans more toward being externally facing. And so I love spending time and dropping by the classroom and having those conversations with our faculty, our staff, and especially spending time with our students. But I realize a portion of my time really needs to be allocated building relationships with those organizations and those organization leaders so that they know who our students are, what they're graduating in, and they're ready to hire them above and beyond any of the other graduates that are coming out across the country.
This wasn't on my question list, so hang with me for a second.
Curveball.
So thinking of the Polytechnic and saying, okay, I want to empower the students to have jobs when they come out. Going to a D1 university and with the growth of the sports programs and a lot of the focus that's been put on sports programs, this is my opinion. I think university sports programs actually have a detrimental effect on the overall academic influence or focus that universities have. And so
That was a curveball for me. I'm a sports guy.
I know I stole the question, but it was a perfect transition because we're talking about Polytechnic and like the types of education that we're getting. And then, so if we have this other, heavy focus on growing this sports element to it, how do you balance that out? Maybe there's a hot take where you're like, maybe sports shouldn't be a main focus of a university where the whole point is to get them jobs when they come out. Because, going and playing football, we want to educate the athletes, but that doesn't always mean we're going to have a great football team, right? If it's the focus is like, oh, you got to be educated. Harvard doesn't have a great football team, right? And Princeton doesn't have a great football team. And there's probably a reason why. So maybe what's
they
your
have in the past though? I will say that
in the past,
yeah.
in the past,
Yeah.
the
For Ivy
long,
League schools,
long past.
Well, I was just watching a YouTube video yesterday just because it caught my attention. Alabama's football facility is a $300 million facility.
Yeah, and I think of that, and I just think
Wild.
that
That's like an
$300 million
NFL.
what is that doing to the tuition, right? If we go back to affordable, like having an open enrollment, affordable university where we can get education out.
Getting guys to the NFL is what it's doing.
It's getting guys to the NFL, but what does that do? What does that do for the university and all the students that don't play football? It's an entertainment, Like what's your take on
Yeah,
it?
it is entertainment for sure. One of the things I'm really proud of is our Utah Tech University student athletes actually just posted this last year their highest GPA in history. And so when we look at our student athletes, oftentimes they're getting higher GPAs than non-student athletes on average. And so they had a 3.4 GPA for all the sports, sort of a blended average, which has been phenomenal. But I think to your point, one of the things that I'm really excited about is not only the experience that's happening for those that are on the field, the gridiron, they're on the courts, and I love sports too. But also for
I love sports. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I love
no,
sports.
you're not
I'm just
hating
like,
on
it's
sports.
just weird that that we've had education and academia is the main funnel for this massive industry. It's weird that there wasn't something outside of schools that help get these athletes to where they are. It's just so strange to me that's how it developed.
And it's changing dramatically because as we know with NIL and some of the other things that are happening, I mean, big, larger D1 schools that are going to be competing on that stage are going to have to spend a lot of money in that area. We're just not there, relative to what we would spend in that kind of space. But we still want to have a great experience, not only for the student athletes, but for all the students who are on campus and each of you. And please do come out and cheer on our Trailblazers. So that's really the other lens is from a community perspective. I really see this university as a community asset. I'm proud of the fact that more than half, more than 50%, 52%, I think was the last statistic I'd seen, come from Washington County. They go to school there. And then between 70 and 80% are actually coming from the state of Utah. So there's really only 20-something% that are coming from the other states and internationally. And we do have a growing international program with about 225 international students.
Cool.
But it's going to be fantastic. Now, I've never been to a Utah Tech University football game. At the end of the season, I was able to stop by and see some baseball and softball and some of the other things. So I can't wait to cheer on our men and women's sports and our Trailblazers.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough balance, right? Because there's pros and cons. I'm cynical. Call me cynical. My father-in-law went to the University of Missouri and transferred once he got an injury. He transferred to Cal State Long Beach, and he had grades for classes he never even took. He's like, they were giving me classes and passing me in classes so that I could play football. And then I transferred. I was
Those
like,
universities are cringing right now.
I know. And that's fair. And so but it's the cynical part of me is like, well, how many universities are doing that? And how have we devolved this $300 million for a football stadium and, this world-class,
I don't think that even included the
school.
stadium. That was just like the football facility.
Thank you for clarifying that. Sweet. So
anyway.
My point being, I get that there's some value in bringing in student athletes, having a university experience that's pretty traditional to what I think there's some expectations. So I guess your thought on it is let's not rock the boat too much. We're not going to ditch the sports program.
Well,
we're going to continue to support it.
Yeah, I think from an athletics perspective, we absolutely are going to continue to support it, but it's not going to be at the detriment of the academy or academics. And going back to sort of my role as university president to continue to ensure that we have, affordable education for our students that want to come and study. I have got to go out and raise money. And so I've got to meet with those that have an interest. And a shout out to all those who have given support, time, effort, treasure, talent to the university. And there have been many. Those are the kinds of things that have really helped to support facilities and our infrastructure projects around athletics. We have a big softball project happening right now. And I've had the chance in the last month or so to meet with some of those donors who are really passionate about education, but they also see it as really critically important to help with our student athletes. And so I've been incredibly surprised in a good way with how philanthropic this community is here in Washington County.
We do have that was at church. We do a corporate prayer where we pray for things that are going on within the church. But what was one of the things that was brought up was how awesome this community is after the Pine Valley fires, and how many people just rushed to do whatever they can to support the firefighters and the community members who lost houses and all those things. And it extends to the switch point and how we deal with homelessness here, and the food bank and a vital role that Utah Food Bank does, and all the volunteers that they get that produces food. We have such a giving community, which I love that part of it. And you really hope, how do you hold on to that? How do you not grow to a size to where there's apathy in some of those things? And I don't know if we're even close to that yet, but we do have a great community in that way.
I think to your point, I mean, we have to guard against apathy. I think that's a good word to use, where people just get complacent. And there's a great heritage here. There's great tradition, and that tradition around service and philanthropy and helping others. That's the spirit that's here, right? That's the kind of work that I see happening within our community. My father-in-law is a retired fire chief, and so we've had a great discussion around some of the work that's happening here. And I met with some of the commissioners and others who are going to make sure that we've got the right people and support to help with some of those events. And so hopefully those fires are getting contained. And we'll continue to see members of our community step up and help where it's needed. Yeah,
it'll be good. Okay, so we're open enrollment institution. We're budget-friendly institution. What causes those costs to rise? When you're looking at the big budget of the school, how do you maintain an affordable university in today's environment? What are some of those tools that you see that you use, or that we're going to use in the future to keep it more of a budget-friendly? Is the open enrollment having, bringing in as many students as you can, does that help keep costs down? How does that work? Is it supply and demand like traditional, businesses? How does that work?
And I think it goes back, Robert, what you said earlier is that I don't know too many people that have ever visited here in St. George in Washington County and said, I just didn't love it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I've been surprised about, this wouldn't surprise the two of you who have lived down here for a long time, but there are a lot of people that have been coming from up north, and they come down here and they visit, or they have a second home, or they travel, or they vacation, they want to go to Zion, and they fall in love with it. And then they remember that when their kids get of age to go to college or go to university, and they decide, hey, that was the place we used to go to and drive by. Yeah. When we went over to Angelica's and had that taco, that was the university that was right down the street. And so those are the kind of things I think that are really making a big impact, is we're seeing individuals from all over the state that are coming here in a big way, which is exciting for our community. And in addition to that, I think what you're seeing is there are many people that are also realizing that that it is more and more expensive to go to school. And so we have to make sure that, we're not increasing tuition rates, or that we're not supporting increasing tuition in a way that couldn't be affordable for our community members.
Mm-hmm. So enrollment, it seems like over the last few years, we had a rapid growing in enrollment. And then just from, I think it was 2023 to 2024, it seems like enrollment stalled. There wasn't a huge growth in enrollment.
Yeah, about 12,000, I think, is total enrollment, right?
Really just 13,000, a little over 13,000. Mm-hmm. And I think that's right. I think what we're seeing is, when we talked about that demographic cliff that was happening. So in that 2007, 2008 timeframe, you saw a modest decrease in birth rates, and that's now manifesting itself 18 years later. Where we're not seeing as many students that were of age now, that were born 18 years ago, coming back and fulfilling those slots. And so it's really competitive as well. So we have to make sure that we continue to show the value proposition of the school, to create an environment where it's a safe environment. People can come to school and learn and grow. We've added to our residence halls, our residence facilities. At one point, really, if you go back to Dixie State days and now Utah Tech days, it was really a commuter university in a lot of ways. So by adding more residence halls on campus, more and more students have the ability to live on campus, and we've typically filled those seats. But every year for more than a decade, we've continued to grow in enrollment, and we anticipate that to be the case this fall.
This might sound crazy, but I hate real estate agents. And after being one myself for the last 10 years, I know the good ones from the bad ones. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate here in Southern Utah, we want you to interview us for the job. Go to realestate435.com and give us a call. We promise you're going to love us. My assumption was, and there's been two, I've heard some conversations being like, oh, they did this rebrand from Dixie State to Utah Tech University for the purpose of being more attractive to people from all over the country, right? And you can use that argument for, whatever reasons, whether it's political or otherwise. But the argument was, hey, well, this is going to help us grow, enrollment. And then we didn't see an enrollment grow. My thought, and after talking to a couple from, especially the medical, like the nursing programs, is that they'll have students that want to come here, but then they can't find a place to live. And so adding those residences on campus, which makes it more affordable for somebody to come and actually find a place to, study and sleep. Do you think that affordable housing is part of the issue?
I definitely,
or maybe the number one issue.
I think it's a big issue, because I think when you think about the total cost of education, we're thinking about tuition and fees. We're also thinking about housing. And so I know that from, with my daughter and soon to be son-in-law, when they started looking at places to live and casitas to find and what that cost for rent would be, certainly it has gotten expensive. I know that I just bought a house. Yeah. And with interest rates the way they are right now. So I think a lot of that is supply and demand. And I think over time, we'll continue to look at as a university, do we need to invest in even additional halls for the students so they can have affordable housing? Yeah. So right now it's about, 1,600 or so beds that are available for students. And again, we anticipate that that's going to be full again this year.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
I would think if you doubled that for next year, they'd be filled like that too, right? Like enrollment would go up as per the beds.
That's the hope. And, you not only is it a way that you can keep costs to a point where it can be affordable for students to live in housing? It is also another stream of revenue. And so when you think about how universities are looking at, increasing their revenue to keep up with inflationary measures, one of the ways they can do that is look at alternative streams of revenue. And one of those has typically been in higher education around housing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
So over the last 2 years, they've added 6 postgraduate degrees at Utah Tech, and there's 275 degree programs. Is the future to continue to add more of these types of programs, new and different programs, or is there a point to where, as a Polytechnic, do you start to hone in and say, okay, these are the programs that we're going to try to make world class, right? Maybe it's you're doing the two things at the same time. Maybe that's like the easy answer, but do you just keep adding programs? Do you ever remove programs? Like, how does that kind of work?
And maybe to add to that, how do you make the decision on what programs to add?
Yeah. And so those are great questions. I mean, I think we went through over the last, 5 to 10 years, a tremendous growth in terms of our programs, probably undergraduate, graduate on the certificate side. I think we have to be very thoughtful and more refined about how we approach growing programs going forward. Yeah. And so, when you have nearly 300 or approximately 300 programs, and you have 13,000 students, you can start to do the math and say, what's that average per area? So we have to be thoughtful in that context. I think one of the things I'm excited about is working closely with our faculty. I think our faculty get missed sometimes in these kinds of conversations. Right. They really need to be at the beginning of those conversations. And so the opportunity that I have to work closely with our faculty to identify what their needs are, what their wants are, And one of the things that we have to invest in more, we've invested over the years, and we have tremendous facilities and infrastructure. We also have the lowest number or percentage of full-time faculty teaching courses in the state system. And so we're less than 40% of our courses are taught by full-time faculty. And so we're adding to our faculty this next year, which is going to be great.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, because you think about the programs probably aren't going to be dictated from the top down saying, hey, these are the programs we're doing. The faculty is going to identify. But I guess the other argument, and just as I'm thinking out loud, is a teacher going to want to say, hey, you should cut this program that I teach and I get paid for, right? And so it's kind of a tough thing to weigh out what programs are worthwhile to continue and what programs do we add that really are going to impact enrollment, but actually solve some kind of community need or job need that's out in the environment.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, Rob, with that last piece too. So it's collaborative. You have faculty, you certainly have the administration, but you also have the workforce. What's the needs and the demands and the wants. And so we have to look at that and say, what we're offering, does it really help to spur the economy and really drive growth here in Washington County and the surrounding region? So that's really a big part of what we're focused on. And to much degree, those conversations, as you mentioned with faculty, has been about how do we add to our faculty? How do we continue to have a larger percentage of courses taught by full-time faculty? And we also, as a side note, have tremendous adjunct faculty. We have tremendous practitioners, who work during the day or work at night or have had experiences and they come back in the classroom. But we have to continue to invest in our full-time faculty to really, really stay relevant in those areas. So from a growth standpoint, I see it not necessarily that we're growing 20% more programs over the next 5 years. I think it's really investing in the programs that we have.
And a big part of that is hiring full-time staff to really dive into those specific programs and make them better.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's talk future education, because I think this is a good transition. So thinking about those other programs. So with artificial intelligence, it's reshaping how students learn, how humans learn just in general outside of a university program, right? Like you get a YouTube channel, there's so many online courses that you could take. And, Jeff and I use it all the time in real estate. We're like, I don't know what this electrical panel is supposed to look like, right? You have an inspection done and it says, this is the issue. And the seller's asking me, well, what should we do? We're using these additional educational sources to be like, what do we do? What does this actually look like?
Upload
right?
a picture and it'll tell you.
Exactly. I'd take a picture of my truck and say, I need to change the brakes. How do I change the brakes? And it's like, oh, this is exactly what you do. This is the size wrenches that you need. It's pretty amazing, right?
It's incredible.
As to what you can do with it. And so, looking at institutions, how are they going to adjust to this? And what kind of strategies have you thought about already? And how do you either educate in the adoption of AI, or what does that look like for universities down the road? Does that make sense?
It does. And I think the first time we started talking about artificial intelligence, even before now we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, but with AI, it was really about how you were going to protect academic integrity, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was really, when you think, Jeff and Rob, about, the classroom environment, and faculty were now hearing about AI, and parents were hearing about it, and students were hearing about it, and how it could really be disruptive in the classroom for good and potentially not. And so I used the example with my 2 college-age kids. And Samantha, my daughter, when I had that conversation with her, she's deathly afraid to use ChatGPT or AI because she's just very concerned that she would be accused of cheating. And so for her, it's like, I'm just going to kind of avoid that and stay away from it. My son, on the other hand, is he's like, I think it's a great tool. I think it's a way I can source information, get it back quickly, and be able to use that and really in a still an okay way, a way with integrity, but really use the technology that's there to really help him be successful in the university. So I think we're seeing different students utilize ChatGPT or AI in the classroom, depending on who they are and what their risk tolerance is. And I think that's where it really started. Now, as we're looking at certificate programs to start at Utah Tech University, it really starts with like an AI machine learning certificate. And so when we talk about career growth or programmatic growth, and where I said I think we're probably not going to grow in terms of just numbers over the coming years, I do think that there are programs that will continue to introduce the university that are going to be in huge demand. And I think we're talking about that topic today.
Yeah, out of necessity.
Out of necessity. And if we don't, we're going to be left behind.
Yeah, for sure. And the filling the role at the university level provides, because you can go take these, and I see these online courses, take this 30-day course on large language model and like how to prompt engineering and all these things. And it's like for $250, and it's like a cash grab. Like when I see that, I'm like, I'm not going to learn anything out of that. I know just out of my own life experience, but an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old might not recognize that. And now it's just, you're dishing good money after bad to get these, arbitrary certificates that might not actually mean anything, that actually don't ever, progress you in any way. And so I think there's a huge role for the universities to say, okay, how do we adopt this into a legitimate, program to be able to utilize, whether it's through manufacturing, software engineering, all these other, portions of it. How do we teach students how to utilize this in the careers that they are using, whether it's, nursing and doctors? I think there was something like 65% of doctors are using this one specific large language model AI program in diagnosing. It's like they've just adopted it straight through. And so thinking about how do you get these students ready to go so that the hospitals and the clinics aren't having to teach somebody come on because they're not getting it, at the schooling. So there's definitely a learning curve that has to go into that. How do you guys approach adding that stuff? I mean, it's so cutting edge and it's moving so quickly. Like, how do you even approach that?
Well, the exciting part is because of the DNA of the university, because we're Polytechnic, we're just so well positioned. It's what we think about. It's what we focus on. So I remember, I've been in higher education. I think it's been 28 years now. And in my time in higher education, I was there when online, education was first introduced. And there were some early adopters in that program. And then you saw everybody else kind of get into it. But if you remember, some of the prestigious universities really stayed away from it for a while. And they're like, yeah, that really degrades the value of education.
I can't charge as much for the degree if they just do it online.
Well, and to your point about, just getting a certificate where AI is teaching you how to do something, they had these, what they called MOOCs, or massive open online courses, and you would have 2,000 people in there. So there wasn't as much interaction in that regard. So I think what we're finding is that students learn differently and in different environments. But we as a Polytechnic university really missionally have to stay focused on, what's in demand, what's cutting edge, what's coming out. And really our faculty are staying, they're staying relevant. They're staying updated on what's happening out there. And as a university administration, we have to make sure we're keeping up with that as well. And, you had talked about, when you look at some of those degree programs and say, well, I think a university or every university at some point really is going to have something in AI. That's probably true if they want to stay relevant, if it's core to their mission. There may be some more traditional liberal arts colleges that may not get into that area, but many of them will. And then when you talked about, how do you make a decision in terms of what programs maybe do you discontinue offering? And a good example of that was, as we collaborate with business and industry, we also collaborate in higher education. And so Dixie Technical College, great college. And, they already had an EMT program, certificate program. We had one too. So for us, it was just that collaboration to say, hey, that's something we're going to discontinue because they have it.
Yeah.
And we see it as we can create pathways between the two schools. And so when I meet with their president, Jordan Rushton, who's incredible, it's about what certificates do they have here? What do we have that you can matriculate into for associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's, and we even have a doctorate program in occupational therapy now.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting idea, because you don't look at it as much as competition as you look at it as like, okay, somebody's going to come to this area. We're an island in the middle of nowhere, right? So if they're going to come here, can they get that education, whether it's at, this school over here or this school over here? It doesn't quite matter. We're going to provide education for students that want to come to this area to learn, no matter what it is, and being able to build that off of each other.
And there's really an expectation for it too. I'm glad that it's just in the nature of, we'll use Dixie Technical College and their President Rushton and myself. It's just in our nature to do that, but it's also an expectation within the Utah system of higher education that we work with partner institutions, that we operate as a system. And so, we just can't be independently doing things without really connecting back as a system within the state system. And so a good opportunity for that, again, is with the University of Utah. They were here recently visiting, and they're introducing really a 3-year MD program, accelerated program that's really focused on rural health. And so that first year is going to be up at the University of Utah, but the second 2 years are going to be here at Utah Tech University and be here in St. George. And so that's a good example of the collaborative nature that, President Randall and myself would have. That's an expectation from the system, but something that we're really leading out in and really driving forward in as presidents of these institutions, to have those strong collaborations and connections with universities and technical colleges.
Cool. I'm gonna take the opposite approach though, as I think about this collaboration approach. The incentive is enrollment. You think as an individual organization, you have this expectation into the system, but is there like a body that's is this like an unwritten expectation within the system? Because what my thought is do you blend together so much to where individual institutions can't stand on, hey, these are our principles, these are our morals, these are our expectations for our students, and it might not actually match these other schools in the systems. Is there potentially a scenario where you get too much pressure to offer certain programs or say certain things, or, thinking of education across the country, and with President Trump, hammering DEI with Harvard and some of these other universities, I wonder, is there some element of where do you draw the line and say, hey, whether this is part of the system or not, this is what our faculty and what our university stand for, and we're not going to, bend the knee, so to speak, just to the system for the sake of, collaboration and, peace and love and harmony and all these other things.
Well, it's a good question. I haven't met that challenge yet. I mean, I think the collaborations that I've referenced with like Dixie Technical College, University of Utah, have been really strong collaborations that have been led by the presidents. But really there is a system, and there is a Utah Board of Higher Education, and we're all kind of working through that area. So I think it's a good balance. I always talk about alignment. I mean, if there's a theme of maybe what I'm focused on as a president, it's about alignment. And so the alignment is the faculty that you mentioned. I have to be aligned with.
Well, there's a board of trustees too, right?
There's a board of trustees. Yeah. There's the Utah Board of Higher Education. There's the administration. There's our community. There's the legislature. There's our taxpayers.
Yeah, it's a lot.
There's a lot to align.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably one of the biggest opportunities, challenges, but thing I enjoy the most is just trying to get alignment, trying to get those things all lined up together.
Yeah. And how do we keep moving the mission forward, so to speak?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I see willing parties on all sides.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's tremendous. And again, it speaks to kind of the communities that we live in and that we serve in.
Yeah. Do you think there's that shift away? And this is gonna be a little more controversial, so it's okay if you want to give me a politician's answer. I'm just gonna lay it out on the table ahead of time. But the idea of going away from a meritocracy to this diversity, education, equity and inclusion, the DEI kind of policies that were, less about what kind of a student you are, but who you are as an individual. Do you feel like it did, was your perspective is that we got off track there at the higher education for a little while, and that there needed to be a shift back to like a meritocracy type setup within these higher education industries and institutions?
So I think a lot of what people may not be aware of is that the students are really driving a lot of the thought that's happening at an institution. And oftentimes we see that through clubs and organizations. And so you could look at 100 clubs and organizations that are offered at the university and see the fingerprint of all of the various students that have an interest in these particular programs. And so it kind of goes back to your point earlier about is athletics or other things sort of detracting from sort of the core mission of academics, the core mission of teaching and learning what's taking place. And then all of the other activities that are happening sort of on the side, some of them are structured and organized with the university, such as athletics, but other times it's where student interest groups are and where their student passions are at the club and the activity level. So the students still have all of the opportunities to really focus on those kinds of things. But really the core of House Bill 261 is to create equal access and opportunity for all students. And so if you look at it holistically, you have students that are coming in from Kenya, or coming in from, Southwest Utah, or maybe they're from Northern Utah. And so how do you create an environment from an academic perspective where everyone is getting that same opportunity to be able to be successful, to be able to learn, and to be able to feel like they belong here at the university? So it's 1911 is when the university came here. And I think one of the things that we've been focused on is how do you continue to bridge sort of the past with the present and look toward the future? And so part of that discussion is talking about the heritage and talking about the legacy and talking about sort of those early ambitions that came here. And you can imagine the wagons sort of opening up, the proverbial wagons, and the encampment mall and education being taught.
Yeah.
And we get to be part of that here every single day. So I'm really proud of our community. I'm really proud of our heritage. I'm really proud of the university. And my message today, really, for those members of your community who are listening, is to come back and see, come back and participate. If you haven't been back on campus for a little while, come back and have a conversation.
Those of you that are upset with the name change, just come check it out.
Come check it out. Come meet me. Yeah. Let's have conversations. And so I think a lot of times for me, it's about really finding common ground and finding what's most important, which is our students. And so the members of our community, they want to support our students. And I think oftentimes it just takes an invitation back. And that's my invitation to our listeners today, is to come back and participate. This is your asset. You're part of the community here. And we want you to feel this as your hometown university.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe if I can summarize what the thought with the meritocracy and the DEI, this idea that there was some kind of school-directed diversity, equity, and inclusion on the enrollment side. This is more set up. Your perspective is that you want, within the culture of the students that are already there, you want there to be a fertile environment for education to thrive without having some expectation to believe a certain thing or live a certain way, and set all of that aside and say, hey, we're just here to learn. We're not going to have some side agenda at the university level, but the students within the school are going to create their own culture. Is that kind of what I hear you saying?
Yeah, and it goes back again to, the opportunity for everyone to have an equal opportunity in education. When you think about it, we had less challenges with this than some institutions. If you look back at higher education law as an example, you'll see cases where affirmative action was a big challenge.
Yeah.
Where are you admitting certain types of students into a program, and they're taking spots from other students who were more deserving academically? We're open enrollment. We're open access.
So we don't necessarily, that's not necessarily one that...
Our arms are open.
Yeah.
Come and see, be part of this. And so I think for us, we are, we want all those students to be here, to be successful, to be thriving. Whereas in other institutions that maybe had a little bit higher selectivity in their model.
And that makes sense.
Maybe that was a little more challenging.
I actually didn't think about that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, having the open enrollment and having requiring it be selective, where you're like, we only have 6,000 spots. That's it. And then now you have 10,000 applicants. How do you whittle that down to the 6,000? We don't necessarily have that challenge.
That's exactly right. I mean, we have 13,000 students and still growing, and we'll have 14,000 students here in the next couple of years, and we'll continue to grow. And I look at it as this. I mean, when we think about, we don't want the taxpayers to subsidize out of state, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, I'm excited and proud of the fact that more than half our students are coming from Washington County, and going back to those percentages in the state. But that being said, it sort of levels out because you have out-of-state tuition. There's different rates for international students. And so there's a different cost structure for students who are coming outside. So the taxpayer is not subsidizing those students to come in from the outside. But generally speaking, again, still more affordable, even if you're coming from out of state or coming from out of country to come to Utah Tech.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, I know you got places to go, people to see. I appreciate you coming on. I think we covered these pretty good. I could ask you a million other questions.
We could probably keep going for another 2 hours.
I'm hoping that we can have you back on as you get a little more settled in, and we can kind of continue to talk about new stuff that comes up. But thanks for spending the time here. I hope the community takes this opportunity to get to know you and get back to the campus and see what they're all about.
I appreciate that. I wanted to say thank you for having me. It means a lot. I feel just sitting here that I'm even more part of the community now. I think the work that you're doing is extraordinary. Congratulations on all the success that you're having. And,
thanks, man.
And please come back and see us and participate at Utah Tech University.
Well, the best part about it is that it's all fun.
Exactly.
It's all fun.
Appreciate you having me.
We're not working
today.
right now.
We could have worse jobs. We could have worse jobs.
For sure.
That's right. Well, thanks again for having me today.
Thanks, Jane. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
See you out there, guys. Thanks for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social media websites. We love your support. We love the dialogue. We want to continue that going.
Find us at realestate435.com. We'd love to help you find a house here in town or help you get wherever you're going.